that you are not here to see me. You are here because you are, in fact, in the presence of greatness. When we talk about someone who has been able to span musical theater, film, television, voiceovers for video games, voiceovers for cartoons, someone who is an actress and writer, someone who has worked in just about every medium, in just about every genre. There are very few people who can lay claim to that. And one of them is here with us tonight. Adrienne Barbeau.
Thank you.
Goodness, thank you. That's a little startling. Welcome, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
You've had a busy day.
Yeah, I had a good time. I got to have dinner with my director from Unearth, John.
I would love to ask you about some of those experiences, but I want to start with something that is a little bit paradoxical. You're associated with some of the most indelible roles in the horror genre and in action. But you don't like horror movies.
I don't like watching them. I don't like to be scared. I don't like a lot of blood. You know, until I did The Fog, well, until I met John Carpenter. I met John on a television film called Someone's Watching Me. Halloween was the first film I ever saw. It was a horror film. I'd never seen Psycho or any of those. I think I have a vague remembrance in maybe grammar school of seeing something called Donovan's Brain. I don't know. Anybody is as old as I am, I might remember Donovan's Brain. But I think I saw it on television. But no, and to this day, I'm not racing to see, you know, the Black Phone 2, which I just narrated for the time, but...
And yet, you keep getting drawn in. How do you end up doing all of these different genre films?
Well, I think because the first feature I ever did was The Fog. I had been doing television and theater up until 1979. And in those days, if you were on TV, I was on a series that ran for 6 years called Maude. If you were on television, the prevailing thought among producers and casting people was nobody's going to pay to see you in the movie theater if they can see you for free Tuesday nights at 8. So it wasn't until John offered me The Fog, and that was my first feature, that, you know, somehow, and in part because of my association with him, I ended up being seen for those kind of genre films. I think maybe I did a couple of others, a science fiction film over in Greece, and then with Keir Dullea, that was a delight for me because I was a big fan of Keir's. And then Escape from New York was sort of not horror, but action adventure. And then Creepshow came along. In between, there was Cannonball Run and some comedies. But I just got, you know, that's what they saw me as. First, I was a musical comedy actor. Then I was a sitcom actress. I couldn't get seen for a dramatic role on TV because they said, oh, she just does comedy. Then I did an episode of, coroner. Quincy, thank you. I did an episode of Quincy that was a dramatic role, and suddenly, oh, okay, now we'll see her for dramatic roles, and then John came along, and then it was over, and it's been everything else ever since.
So watching you in The Fog tonight, there's so many scenes where you are having to react to something outrageous. You're reacting to a piece of driftwood catching fire. You're reacting to ghost pirates trying to drag you down into the ocean. How do you make it real?
I just believe it. The piece of driftwood caught fire. That doesn't happen every day. And it's funny, someone asked me today what it is I love about acting, and I think that was the question, and I honestly, it stumped me because I just love it. I mean, I love everything about it. I don't know, I didn't know how to answer the question, but it's something like that. I just, I believe it. I guess that's all I can say. It never crosses my mind. I don't think about it. It's just, if you were in a room and a piece of driftwood caught fire, you'd probably be reacting too.
And if you believe it, the audience will believe it.
I hope so. I hope so.
So you started off in musical theater. For people who don't know, you were in Fiddler on the Roof on Broadway. You played Hottle.
I played Hottle.
And you originated the role of Rizzo in Grease.
In Grease, yes. With Mary Bostwick, who some of you may know from the other conventions, because Mary is traveling right now with Rocky Horror Picture Show. But before that, Mary and I did Grease together on Broadway, yes. And actually, the thin fisherman, the young fisherman, who falls out of the cabinet later in the film, Jim Canning, was in the original company of Grease. He played Duty. He sang Magic Changes. I don't know if I introduced him to John. I did introduce Tommy Atkins to John, but I don't know how Jim got to be cast, but there's another greaser on stage.
How did you translate some of those skills from being a musical theater actress to doing something like this?
Not easily, not easily. My first television role was Carol on Maude. I'd only done musical comedy on stage, and I showed up to do television, and I didn't understand the medium, and I think I'd have to go back and look at it. Maybe nobody else had noticed, but I was very nervous, and I was not so good, I don't think. But about 6 weeks into the series, we did a telethon, a musical telethon, and suddenly I was in my métier, or my milieu, and suddenly I sort of relaxed and realized, oh, wait a minute. They've hired me because they saw something in me that they felt was right to go up against B, Arthur, they felt was right for the role. Norman Lear kept saying, if you don't trust yourself, trust me. I know you're good. I know you can do this. But it took a little while. And then actually, cut to, many years later, and having done a lot of television films and a lot of guest stars on television and Maude and everything. I did the film with John, Someone's Watching Me, and it was a wonderful role. I played what I think is the first gay woman in a television film, and we did the first scene, and John came over, and he said, "That was great. Do less." I said, "Do less," and all of a sudden the light bulb went off, and I realized, oh, okay, this is a different medium, I can bring it down. I brought it down for Maud, from theater, and I brought it down for all the other things. But it was really John saying that. So I sort of learned by doing. And then, of course, I ended up doing Creepshow for George, and he kept saying, "You can go bigger, you can go bigger." And after all these years, I've found my way, I think.
Did that completely throw you off when George Romero was saying?
It came down to my thinking, Adrienne, he's the director. If this is what he wants, if you fall on your face, I'm not going to go out and say, well, George told me to do it like that. But, I've got to trust him. He's the director, and he knows what he wants, and I had a great time, and she turned out to be great fun.
Now, is really your favorite of your genre roles? I know that's not fair, right?
Well, you might say she's my favorite of my genre roles. She's not my favorite. My favorite all-time role was Ruthie in Carnival for HBO. I don't know if all of you have seen it or many of you have seen it, but we only ran 2 seasons. But I loved doing Ruthie because I loved the whole series. I loved everybody I was working with. I loved the caterers. I loved the location. I loved the metaphysics of the series. And for a woman of my age at that time, I was in my early or mid-50s, I don't know, to be offered a role that wasn't a doctor or a judge or a nurse or a lawyer, but was instead a very sort of sensual woman who dances with snakes and ends up having a relationship with a much younger man who can heal people. Those kinds of roles don't come along very often. So I really loved Ruthie. I love Stevie Wayne. I love Maggie. I love Cable. I haven't seen it in 1,000 years, and because Swamp Thing was a lot more difficult to make, I don't have as much affection for Cable. But I've had a good time doing most of what I've done.
So, which of your characters would you say is closest to you?
Oh, probably, well, let me think. Probably Stevie, just because she's a mother, and she's strong. I love playing the character that I played for John Lyons in Unearthed, because she was a mother, she was strong, and they're all close to me in some ways, except maybe Billy. I hope she's not too close to me. But I did understand her. I understood why she was the way she was. Yeah, there's a little bit of me, and I don't know, did you all see Oddities before you saw The Fog?
I'm interested to hear what drew you to Oddities and to the character of Susan.
Well, the script, and I was approached by the director, Tyler Savage, who had gone to school with my older son, Cody Carpenter, and whose co-producer and I think co-writer on the short was one of Cody's best friends. And so Dash Hawkins, Tyler's partner, just called and said, I've done a project I'd like to talk to you about. Can we have coffee? And I met with the 2 fellas, and they sort of told me what it was, and I said, it sounds interesting, send me the screenplay. And I liked the screenplay. I thought it was well written. And I don't know if it was specifically the character, but it was the overall, and so we took a chance and we made that. And then just this past May, Tyler wrote a feature with the only similarity to the character you just saw is that she has a 5,000 square foot barn that is filled with oddities and antiques, and that's what she's selling. And but it's a feature film that's sort of a combination of Thelma and Louise and I don't know what else, but it's a thriller horror film, and we just finished that. They just locked the picture, and so I'm hoping we'll be seeing it next year. And I'm also very proud of that. She was an interesting character. A villain, but had a reason for the way she was knocking people off.
And that's I don't know if I would say that Catherine in Unearthed was straight up villain, but
Oh no, I didn't think of her as a villain. No, not at all.
But she's very driven to protect her family.
Yes, yeah.
Do you think that horror films, genre films, give give women opportunities to explore different kinds of characters and different kinds of extremes than maybe some of the mainstream?
You know, I'm not the person to ask because I don't even see many movies anymore. I tend to watch international television series on MHZ Choice. So I do see the movies that I narrate for the blind. And many of them are from Blumhouse. And so I do see horror films that I would never choose to go see if I wasn't working. But I guess I do, obviously, genre films give an actor, male or female, an opportunity to express a lot of different emotions, whereas maybe a comedy doesn't, or a drama is just, straight drama. But at least that's what I hear from my friends who are doing genre films. They love to be in all those situations. I really tend to it starts with the screenplay. If I like the screenplay, and then if the character draws me in, then I say yes.
What are the qualities you look for when you're evaluating a screenplay?
Logic, reality. I get sent many horror films where people are getting killed in the most grotesque, violent ways in the first 3 pages of the script. You don't know who they are, you don't care, it could matter less. It's just all about how can we slaughter somebody, and that is a genre, I guess. I guess that's the slasher film now. That doesn't interest me. And I think the reason the films from the 70s that everybody seems to love and from the 80s are because there was some character development. You cared about these people. You didn't want, even, Father Malone, who I have to tell you, I've never told this to an audience. Before I married John, quite a while before I dated John and married John, I dated a fellow named Michael Malone. And then when I met John, and John was working with Deborah Hill, I introduced Deborah to my ex-boyfriend, Michael Malone, and they became a couple. And it just dawned on me for the first time watching it tonight. Father Malone, oh yeah, John named him after Michael. So that's something nobody else knows.
But it's a different spin on that ending, doesn't it?
But you care about all of them, and so that makes their jeopardy so much greater. I mean, I don't think you want any of us to go under at the hands of the ghosts.
And you want to be able to feel the emotions that they're feeling.
Yes.
There has to be a basis for that.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm drawn to in a film. What I loved about Unearthed, for those of you, and I assume most of you have seen it if you're living here in Erie, but for those of you who haven't, the film deals with fracking and the horrors of fracking. But what John did is he presented both sides of the story, I guess you'd say. It wasn't, people who are doing such and such are bad people and this is a bad thing and it's going to lead to horror. He presented an understanding of why people are doing what they're doing, even if other people are thinking this is not to be done. And I think that's what drew me to the script originally.
So horror does give us ways to talk about things.
It can.
That can be difficult topics.
It can, yeah. I just saw Tina Romero's Queens of the Dead, and it's a wonderful film and I recommend it. But one of the things that she has incorporated is our love of social media. At one point, I don't want to give too much away, but at one point, something comes out over social media and all the zombies are just tied to their phones. And so it can deal with a lot of stuff.
So, you appreciate good writing.
Yes.
You've worked with some
I
great
appreciate good grammar too, and good spelling. And maybe it's just showing my age, but when I get a screenplay where there's typos and there's misspelled words and there's misused words, I think, if this writer doesn't have enough, what's the word I want? Enough concern about making it right, then, already he's starting to lose me, or she's starting to lose me.
So if you're sending the script to Adrienne,
Make sure you go.
Make sure.
Make sure you send it through spell check and grammar check maybe. And I did a film a couple of years ago. The original script. It was so poorly written, just in terms of none of the characters, and they were all hardcore, like casino, hardcore girls, bartenders and things like that. None of them even used a contraction. Now, people don't talk like that. And it was like, wait a minute, okay, if we're gonna do this, we gotta change this. So those things make a difference to me. They may not make a difference to a lot of other people, but to me they do, because it pisses me off. Learn how to spell.
So is this the genesis of your desire to be a writer?
No.
To show people, all right, this is how you do it.
No. I didn't have any desire to be a writer. It never crossed my mind I would be a writer. I started keeping a journal when I was very young, just as a way of working out my life, I think. When I ended up writing my memoir, my editor wanted more stories about Maud and more stories about my career and more stories. And I realized when I went back to my journals, all I ever wrote about was, the guy I was dating and the emotional problems. My career didn't matter to me. I was writing about trying to figure out who I was and all of that. But no, I fell into writing. I had a girlfriend, my closest girlfriend, who was a film editor, and her son and my son were in preschool together. We met on the first day of preschool and became very, very close friends. And she passed away in 1998 from breast cancer. And on my first day of preschool for my younger boys, a woman walked onto the campus who looked just like my deceased friend. And I remember reaching out and grabbing hold of a railing because I thought I was going to pass out. She just looked just like her. And she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I'm fine. You look like somebody I know." She said, "Oh, who?" You wouldn't know her. She was a film editor. She was my closest friend, and she passed away from breast cancer. "Oh, I'm a film editor, and I have breast cancer. We could be best friends," she said. And I said, well, let's You know, and we did. The next day, I think we went and we had a 3-hour coffee. And in the course of the coffee, she told me about a writers group that she had attended. She had attended their recital. It was a bunch of actors and actresses who were studying acting with an actress who had been on Broadway about the same time I had, a musical comedy actress. And I swear to God, I didn't even know that people taught writing. I mean, I knew they taught grammar and you know, maybe they taught story structure or something, but I didn't think, I thought you were either born Stephen King or you didn't write, you know. But when this woman who looked just like Suzanne said to me, this lady has an acting class, I thought, you know what? This is my dead friend telling me I'm supposed to go take this woman's class. And as it turned out, she lived a half a mile away from me, and she was a Broadway actress. I mean, we had that in common, and I started taking her class, and we became very good friends. And after about, if you're going to take a writing class, you have to bring in writing material. So I started writing about things that had happened to me in my career that I may have taken for granted, that other people might think were funny. Dating Burt Reynolds. You know, making the Rat movie in Moscow, and things like that. And after about 6 months of bringing in these stories, she said, you should get an agent because I think you have a memoir here. And so I did, and I got a deal for a memoir, and that was my first foray into writing.
But not your last.
Not my last, only because I was approached by someone who read the memoir. He was an Irish author who had done many, like more than 100 books in the UK. Science fiction, horror, romance. I think he had written a book with Armin Shimmerman. And he approached me and he said, you know, this is a great book, but it's not the right book. You should have written a book for your horror fan base. And I said, Michael Scott was his name. I said, you know, I'm not a story person. I can write characters, I can write scenes, I can write dialogue, I know that, but I couldn't tell us. I can't make up a story. I wouldn't know, you know, it'd be boy meets girl, boy goes out with a girl, boy leaves girl, that's the end of the story. I'm not a story person. He said, let's do it together. And so we sat down and he said, okay, what do you want to do? Well, they tell you, write what you know. So I said, okay, let's make her a 450-year-old Armenian, because I'm Armenian, vampire who runs a movie studio. And between the two of us, we came up with the idea that all of the members of her clan, her vampire clan, were A-list Hollywood actors. Orson Welles, Mary Pickford, you know, I was very logical about finding people who had died in a manner in which we could think that, oh, maybe they came back as vampires. And somebody's killing off the A-list Hollywood actors. And so the vampire movie scream queen, whatever, hooks up with the hunky Beverly Hills detective, because I love detective novels, that's all I ever read. And they try to figure out who's killing off her A-list Hollywood clan. And that was Vampires of Hollywood. Which, now when I read it, I think, oh, you know. But we got a deal for 2 books with St. Martin's Press. And when time came to write the second one, my co-writer sort of disappeared. So he said, you just, you know, you take over and you do it yourself. And so I wrote the second one, which I like. I'm happy with it. It's called Love Bites. Has a little more of my humor in it, I think. And then my publisher came back and said, well, we need to finish this. We need to make it a trilogy. So the third one is called Make Me Dead, and that was just published as as an ebook. But that one takes place in a horror convention, because write what you know, and that finishes that trilogy.
So if you're feeling a little suspicious and looking around behind you, possibly Osvana Moore and her clan are something.
It might be there. But don't read Vampires of Hollywood. Start with Love Bites. It's a standalone. It'll work. It'll work without reading the first one.
So are you working on any other writing projects at the moment?
During the pandemic, I co-wrote with the director of Grease and the producer, one of the producers of Grease, a book for the 50th anniversary. We released it for the 50th anniversary of Grease, called Grease, Tell Me More, Tell Me More. And we compiled stories from all the actors who had been on Broadway, in the National Company, in the bus and truck companies, everyone from Johnny Travolta, who was in the National Company, to Patrick Swayze, who had passed, but whose family gave us some stories. Mary Lou Henner, names of people you would know, names of people you wouldn't know, but they were all original Greasers. And they sent us their stories, and we edited them and put them together about their audition, about getting hired, about getting fired, about having their romances, about rehearsals. It's a fun. There's some incredible stories in there that I had never heard because I didn't know half of these actors. I left the show fairly soon, but some wonderful stories in there. Very funny and in some ways touching. And I have been told by young people who are just getting started in the business that it's really a nice guidebook for actors, because it really tells. I mean, you guys have got to forgive me. My memory is really going. Alan, Manhattan Transfer, what played our original. What's the name of the Johnny Angel? Johnny, who knows Grease? Who knows Grease? Okay. Teen Angel. Alan had just had his 13th audition for, I think it was Superstar, and had not gotten it, and came in to audition for us, or for them. My audition was totally different, and just thought, this is the end of my career. I mean, I've just had 13 auditions for the same role in Jesus Christ Superstar and didn't get it, and then got hired the same day that he auditioned for Grease. So it's interesting stories like that. I went in and auditioned for them. I don't remember this. They tell me I auditioned 4 times, but I did the auditions, and it was Christmas vacation. And my boyfriend, not Michael Malone, his family was from Los Angeles, so I got on a plane and flew to LA. We were all in New York to spend the Christmas holidays. And 2 days after I got there, the producers called me and said, we'd really like to see you for another role. They had seen me for Marty. We'd really like to see you for another role. Can you come in tomorrow? This is 1971, late 1971. In the first place, who had money to buy an airplane ticket? I mean, we were all starving actors. And you didn't do that. And I said, no, I can't. I mean, I'm on vacation, I can't. Okay, hung up. And they called about 5 days later and said, well, if we could see you on New Year's Eve, could you come in? And I thought, Adrienne, if you don't want to be unemployed the rest of your life, you gotta say goodbye to the boyfriend and the boyfriend's family and get your butt back to New York. I auditioned for them around 11 o'clock on New Year's Eve, and at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they called and said, you've got the part, and we started rehearsals 4 days later. So it's all stories like that, and things that happened on stage, running it was one national company, and they were playing Vegas, and the boy that was playing Kaniki, and I can't remember which actor it was, hit the gas on the car, and the car went into the orchestra pit, and, you know, all kinds of stories like that. So anyway, if you're interested in theater or you're interested in Grease, that one came out in 2022 for the 50th anniversary.
So I do want to ask you one more question about your acting career. You've gone from Broadway to doing voice and other things for video games.
Yes, yeah. I'm the overseer in Fallout 76, which some people know. Halo 4, God of War, a whole bunch of them. Sometimes I don't even know what they are because the contract they give us is under a bogus name because for non-disclosure, you know.